How do we demand governing authorities establish equal justice? And it's a very, very important question, and it's encouraging to see that a church is willing to look at this and talk about it, because as we know, many of conservative rural Oklahoma churches, well, let's just pray and call it good, and that's really not good enough. As we've known from Brett's sermon last night, we are called and demanded to do more than that. So the first thing we need to look at is on an issue as important as ending abortion, because right now, in this time, there is nothing more important than that from a political standpoint. We have to be very wise, knowledgeable, and strategic on how we approach the legislature to demand that they do establish equal justice. So, because you're not going to get anywhere if you just show up at the Capitol and start screaming at them. You're not going to get anywhere if you just send a couple very passionate emails, right? It's not going to be effective. And we don't want to approach this issue in an ineffective manner. So what we want to do is we want to be very wise, we want to be very knowledgeable and strategic. I kind of liken it to, so I'm an avid hunter. I love hunting. And when I go hunting, I don't just get a gun and just go show up on opening day, right? No, I spend hours looking at topographical maps and going out there, trying to get to know the lay of the land, the deer, and everything else. Or a business venture. If you're going to start a business, do you just throw up a website and put up some signs? No, absolutely not. So since we don't approach other parts of life like that, we should not approach this like that. We need to be very knowledgeable about what's going on, very strategic on how we approach this. And so one of the things that we have to know is we need to understand, and you need to understand who you're dealing with and how to address the situation. And that's what I hope to really kind of give you some insight today from my time serving with these people. I want to be able to help you understand who they are, how they operate, and how we need to approach this as a church. And nobody, it's always nice to not be involved in politics, right? I mean, who really enjoys talking to politicians? I mean, I don't. I mean, nobody does, really. No, who wants to go to the Capitol? It's not something that we just like, oh, that's going to be a fun thing to do, right? I mean, it's really not. There's a reason that politics in general has a negative connotation to it. But John Adams once wrote to his wife and said, "I must study politics and war, that our sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy." Now, that was a different time, right? But we understand, and in this context, in today's realm, we could almost say we must engage in politics so that those being murdered may live and our children don't inherit this genocide. So even though it's not pleasant, even though it's not fun, there's a billion other things that we'd rather be doing, we must do it. And we have to follow the lead of our founders. So why is it important that we get involved politically? Because a lot of people will be like, well, let's just do these other things. Let's go to the abortion clinics. Let's go to the pro-life organizations or donate money or whatever it may be. And those things are good things, some of them. But I don't really want to do the political lobbying aspect of it. So why is it important, though? And the reason is because abortion is legal because the Oklahoma State Legislature and the Oklahoma governor are actively protecting it and are ensuring that it legally continues in our state. That's the reality of it. And I know in rural Oklahoma or any conservative state, they don't like to hear that, but that's the truth. The reason 20 babies are being ripped apart in Oklahoma every day is because the people that we have sent up there are actively making sure that it continues. And we have to put a stop to it. And additionally, in this point in our history, the state government has the authority and the duty and the ability to actually end abortion. So we need to go to the abortion clinics. We need to rescue those being taken away to murder. But we also need to put an end to it, period. And right now, the people who can do that is the state legislature. That's why it's so important that we understand that this is why we need to do this. And keep in mind that the government, on any level, they'll do everything they can to get away with, and we're the ones that are allowing them to get away with it. That's all there is to it. They are responsive to us. What we allow them to get away with, they'll be cool with. That's just how it operates. And so that's why we need to understand what we're doing and how we're going to approach them. So again, what I want to do here in the next few moments is take what I have seen in the past 6 years and how these guys operate, how the Senate operates, how politics operate. I want to give you an inside perspective on exactly how that works and what we can do to address the situation. And also I'm going to talk about some of the fallacies that they're going to throw at you when you approach them, your local senator or your representative, about abolition. And that's a whole other topic, but I do want to talk about it briefly. So, and I'll go ahead and say, I'll be really, really blunt at times, exceptionally blunt. I didn't make a great legislator, mainly because I was really blunt and not very diplomatic. So I will say things that may, I don't know, you may have a cousin or something who's in the legislature and it may offend you, and I'm not going to apologize for that. It is what it is. So it won't be your typical political speech, so just kind of be ready for that. So there's basically three aspects that we need to understand, and we need to follow these steps on how to demand our governing authorities establish equal justice. The first one is we have to accept that the state government is evil. I know, nobody wants to hear that. They know, Senator so-and-so, he's a good old boy, right? That's not true. It's just not. The state government is very, very bad, very godless, very evil. We can argue about that, and I'll win every single time. That's all there is to it. So we need to put aside the idea of, oh, yeah, that's our good old conservative state government. And, oh, I love Governor Stitt. He's awesome. He and his wife Sarah are great Christian people. Yeah, maybe they are. It's still an evil place. And they're still allowing 20 babies a day to be murdered under their watch. So go ahead and accept the fact that this is an evil organization. 96, 97% of the people up there are very, very bad people. And this is just based off me serving for 6 years in that capacity. Now, 5 of those years that I served, I authored and carried multiple bills that would abolish abortion, criminalize it, and just end it. Now, and most of you have followed an abolition bill, but real briefly, it defines life beginning at conception. It states that the intentional killing of that life is murder and shall be treated as murder, just like other statutes. And then if any court rules that we can't do that, that court ruling is null and void, because we will uphold the Constitution and protect the life. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. No compromising, equal justice. That's what those bills do. So to talk about to show how the legislature is evil, I've done that every year since 2016, and every session, the Oklahoma State Senate refused to even give those bills a hearing. Not vote on them, just a committee hearing. Just let's talk about it. Let's discuss it, deliberate, amend it if needed. They wouldn't even give it a hearing for 5 years. This is your Oklahoma State Senate. So after dealing with that, so in March of this year, my 6th year doing this, after trying to play by the rules, right, and I'm still playing by the rules, I made a motion on the Senate floor to have the bill basically bypass committee and be eligible to be heard after committee on the Senate floor. It's a valid motion. It's done every year. So, but I wanted to force a vote. All right, if you guys aren't willing to talk about it, we need to see where everybody stands on this issue. So I made the motion, and I want you to think about, and I say that kind of casually, right? But if you think about what happened, and I know some of you were there when that happened, some of you have seen the video when that happens, but don't underestimate that moment. Because since Roe v. Wade, after 63 million children have been murdered, for the first time in the history of our state, a state legislature had the opportunity to actually discuss ending abortion, period. And 4 out of 48 state senators voted in favor of hearing the bill. That is your Oklahoma State Senate. That is your Oklahoma State Legislature. That's why I say that they are inherently evil. So there's a statement I want you to ponder, which could possibly get me in trouble, but I don't really care. What is the difference between Adolf Hitler, who used his position of authority to kill millions of Jews, about 11 million? What is the difference between Adolf Hitler, who used his position of authority to kill Jews, and an Oklahoma State senator who uses his position of authority to make sure that children are continuing to be murdered? What's the difference? What's the moral difference? There's not one. There is not one. And a lot of people bristle at that and be like, well, so-and-so is my cousin, and that's ridiculous, and he's a good Christian. He goes to the Methodist church down the road or whatever. But there is no difference. If you're going to use your position of authority to make sure that people or innocent children are continuing to be murdered, there isn't a difference. And so we've got to accept that and understand that we are dealing with a very bad organization. And it's hard to, because there's something in our psyche that makes us want to kind of be proud of, respect, and trust our elected officials, and go up and shake their hand at community events or whatever. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's the the patriot pulling out our heartstrings or whatever it is. But everywhere I go, people are like, oh yeah, so-and-so will be all behind it. And for some reason, I don't know if it's like they're your sports team that you're wanting to root for, and you don't really want to talk bad about them, or what it is, but we've got to put that aside and look at this from a biblical perspective. So, for example, here in Muskogee, you have Senator Dwayne Pemberton. He was a school administrator, and he was one of the guys that voted to not hear Senate Bill 13. That's your senator. If you live outside of town, you got Senator Kim David, who's the majority floor leader. She's the one that actually made the motion to table that bill. She lives up in Porter, somewhere around there. These are who we have elected to go to the Capitol. What about Kevin Stitt? Everybody's a Kevin Stitt fan, right? What has he done in the past 2 years to end abortion? Nothing. And a lot of people are like, well, let him get in there and get some stuff done. No, that's ridiculous. Because I've actually had him in my office when he has come and walked through the Senate offices and lobbied for specific bills on government reform and stuff like that. But he has never once lifted a finger to help any type of abolition bill. So what's he doing up there? We've just got to, and I know people are, well, I voted for Stitt. Yeah, well, so did I. And now we need to think about what we're going to do about that. Or what about, even on the national level, what about beloved Senator James Lankford and Senator Jim Inhofe? These guys are the cream of the crop, right? They've never once come back to the state and pushed for the abolition of abortion. They have, however, come back to the state and pushed for other deals, like, let's not do this gambling bill or something like that. Well, why are they silent? Why are they silent when there's an abolition bill that has been presented for 5 years in a row? We have to understand these are not good people. They've been given a position of authority, and they're using it to protect evil. We have got to accept that fact. And keep in mind that all of these government officials campaign on being pro-life and we love children. Well, just look at what they've done. Look at what they've done, whether they've been in office 2 years or 10 years, and you tell me if that adds up. So that's number one. And I know that's kind of a shocker, maybe not to some people here, but the state legislature is very, very evil. These are very bad people. And these are my colleagues that I'm talking about, by the way. I still text them. I mean, I've got relationships with some of them, and we've had these conversations before. So number two, Build relationships, and again, so going back to how do we demand that our governing authorities establish equal justice? That was number one. Number two is build relationships, then stay actively involved. So, your state senator and your state representative should know you on a first-name basis. They should. But if they don't, you need to get to know them. You need to send them an email, set up a meeting, maybe have some friends come over. They'll meet with you because you're their constituents, right? And get to know them. Introduce yourself and start forming a relationship with them. We've got to do that. We can't say, well, he said he was pro-life on his mailer. I voted for him, so I'm good. No, that's not cutting it anymore, period. These people need to know you on a first-name basis and know that you're going to be watching them. So, as you begin to form a relationship with them, actually all legislators will fit into 4 categories regarding the abolition of abortion and how they're going to address the bill. Every legislature, I don't care what state it is, they're going to fit into 4 categories. So keep this in mind as you begin to form these relationships. One of them, they may be ignorant. And that's a lot of them. They have no idea. They honestly think that they don't know the difference between abolition and pro-life. I mean, they really thought that voting for a heartbeat bill was the best thing they could do. Now, those are becoming more rare because of movements like this. It's getting hard in Oklahoma to be like, oh, I didn't know anything about abolition. Maybe, but it's getting harder. But you may have a legislator who is ignorant, and that's fine. You need to build that relationship so that you can make them not ignorant. The second one is they're a hypocrite. This is probably 90% of them. They will come here and be like, oh, we would absolutely love to abolish abortion. I'll do it. And then they'll disappear and you won't hear from them again. And when they go to the Capitol, they will cast votes to keep that from actually happening. They're hypocrites. That's all there is to it. The third, and I know a lot of them are this way, they're cowards. They agree with the premise of abolishing abortion and telling the Supreme Court, now you can't do that. We're not going to do that. But they do not have the backbone to do it. They cave to leadership because they want their other bills heard. They're just cowards. That's all there is to it. And then obviously the fourth one is an abolitionist, and there's not many of them. In the Senate, I know like 1.5. So I know for one right now. And those are the ones that we strive to find and get behind and encourage and support, and that's really what you want your representative to be. Now, so I talked about this building relationship because this is probably one of the most important things that I'll talk about during this talk, because the power that you carry as a constituent is huge. Legislators are really weak people. I know, that's mean. They are. That's all there is to it. They're very weak and spineless individuals. And the one thing they fear the most are their constituents, are an educated, engaged, influential constituents. And why is that? Because what they want is to be reelected. That's what they want more than anything else in the world, is to be reelected. That's why they don't do things like run abolition bills, because it's controversial. And what they want to do is stay off the radar, ride the fence, so nobody hates them, so that they have an easy path to reelection. So what they fear the most is an educated, involved constituent, especially when that constituent says, I have a circle of influence, and I'm going to use that circle of influence if you lie to me, or if you don't do what I'm requesting. And it really doesn't matter, and the important thing here is it really doesn't matter how big your circle of influence is. They don't really care, because, for example, and I've got stories after story over the past 6 years. I mean, if you're a pastor, that's not good for them, because they know you have a congregation that you're speaking to. And so if you were to get up and say, our senator voted against the idea of abolishing abortion, that's not going to be good for them in rural Oklahoma or rural Texas or wherever it is, right? But business owners, same way. They don't want business owners to not like them. But even if you're like a stay-at-home mom, they fear you too, because you've got some friends on Facebook, and I've got stories of senators being emotionally distraught because it's election year and some Facebook mom group in their district is circulating something that they did about vaccines or something. And they know that they're losing votes and they can't stand it. So, and my wife also, she doesn't have a filter. She's way less diplomatic than I am. And she has sent some senators emails and they will come and talk to me about it. So it doesn't matter how big your circle of influence is. If you use it, it's going to get attention. It will. But see, because they want to go to Oklahoma City, to the Capitol, and do their things, and all their constituents are blind to really what's going on. And then they want to be able to come back to the district and be like, yeah, this is everything we've done on the life issue or transportation or roads or whatever it is. And you don't know any better. And so everybody in the room's like, well, yeah, he said that, so that sounds good. That's what they want. So they don't like when constituents are actively involved and actually know what's going on. To really come in on that, so Senate Bill 13, which was the most recent abolition bill, when those 4 senators voted in favor to give the bill a hearing, 4 out of 48, right? It was myself, it was Senator Nathan Dahm from Broken Arrow, which he was for it anyway. But the other 2, the only reason they voted for it was because they had constituents on their case about it. And so here's the story. The morning of that, I was going around talking to some senators, and Pastor Dusty Devers, who's actually going to be here, I think he speaks after me maybe. He's a pastor, and his parents are involved, and he lives in Senator Chris Kidd's district, right? And he was on Chris Kidd, and he's like, you better vote for this. You know it's coming. And I went and talked to Senator Kidd right before I made the motion, and he was almost in tears. He was so distraught because he knew that there was constituents in his district who knew exactly what was about to happen. And even though leadership was telling him, you better go with us on this, he said, I can't because my constituents are going to be infuriated if I don't. That's why you're talking three constituents. The other one, Senator Roland Peterson from Enid. My brother's a major in the Air Force, and he was stationed in Enid for like 9 years, so we got a lot of friends up there. And so I made one phone call the night before, and I said, hey, I'm going to make this motion tomorrow morning, and I need Senator Peterson to go with me on it. And it was a lawyer up there who's very politically involved and keeps up with things. He's like, he'll go with you. I'll call him. So he called him that morning and said, Roland, you better vote yes on this. And he voted yes. And that is one call from one actively involved constituent. So if you imagine what 100 knowledgeable, actively involved constituents could do, they'll do what you need them to do. Because they know that in Oklahoma, a state Senate race can sometimes come down to a few hundred votes. They know that. So they know if this church and everybody that they know is going to swing an election, the question is, especially regarding abortion, are they going to lose votes for voting to abolish abortion? Are they going to lose votes in Muskogee County? No. But they will lose votes if they vote against it. So that's why they're so responsive. So that's why it's very important that we build a relationship, become actively involved. Now, the third and final point here, you have to be educated when you talk to them. Don't just call them and be like, hey, I want you to vote for this, because they're going to be able to talk a little legal jargon around you, and don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. A good story is there's all these liquor, y'all probably heard about all the liquor laws in the past 6 years. I don't really care about any of them. But I had a whole bunch of liquor stores from my district calling me saying, hey, I need you to vote for this bill. Literally 10, 12 people were calling me, liquor store owners. And I wasn't being a jerk, I legitimately needed to know why. And so I asked them, I said, okay, why? Why are we needing this bill to pass? And literally they'd say, oh, we don't know. The Liquor Association has told us to call everybody and tell them to vote for it. I'm just like, really? So if you don't know why you need this bill, I know you really don't care, and you're not going to go tell somebody and get mad if I don't vote for it, right? So we need to be educated on not on everything. You don't have to be educated on transportation funding and everything else, but whatever issue is important to you, you need to be very, very educated on it. And a lot of people, I hear this all the time, don't like going and talking to elected officials because, again, they start using legal jargon and talking circles around them, and they feel kind of intimidated from being in the office, and the state senator's at the big chair and all this stuff. And here's the thing. It was designed, it was set up that way. They set it up that way intentionally. And don't buy into it. I don't know how 75% of these people got elected to office anyway. That's just all there is to it. My 13-year-old daughter, I promise you, if I put Isabel, my 13-year-old daughter, on a stage and had her debate every single one of the state senators in Oklahoma, she would school them all day long. I promise. So don't let them intimidate you, but the best thing to do that is to be educated on it. So now, and there's great resources out there. Again, just take the time to do it. It kind of goes back to what I first said about this is such an important issue. Let's take the time. Let's take the time to educate ourselves and understand really what's going on. And there's great resources out there. I mean, Brett Baggett, you sit down and talk to him, and he'll talk to you. Free the States has got all kinds of online stuff. Shoot, I mean, if you guys want to, give me a call. Let's do a little, training seminar some weekend where we can talk about how to lobby legislators. Because they will. I mean, they will tout. And so here, saying that, I'm not going to get into it because I know we don't have the time, but I do want to give you a few of the things that people have come to me and said, well, we went and talked to them, and here's some of the stuff they said, and we didn't really know how to respond. So I just want to give you a handful of them. One of them is they're going to immediately default to or tout other pro-life bills and how amazing they are and what a huge step we've made, right? Things like the heartbeat bill. Well, in Oklahoma, you can't kill your baby unless you hear the heartbeat. And a lot of people, if you're not educated, be like, well, I guess that's good. No, it's not. That's sick and demented. You can't kill your baby until you know it has a heartbeat. Then go ahead. That's horrible. But that's what they'll tout things like that. You can't kill your baby unless you see a picture of it first. Once you see an ultrasound, then you can kill it. It's awful. The Down syndrome bill was a bill that I debated against on the Senate floor. You can't kill your baby if it has Down syndrome. If it doesn't, if it's healthy, go ahead. You're good to go. But these are the things that they'll throw to you to be like, see, look at all this stuff that we've been doing. But the reality is any pro-life bill that does anything other than abolish abortion and provide equal protection is just as evil as pro-choice legislation and actually makes the matters worse. And the reason it makes the matters worse is because it's basically falsely legitimizing the Roe v. Wade ruling, and it's creating more avenues to have abortions. And I know you guys heard about that a little bit yesterday. So another one, Senate Bill 13 or abolition bill is unconstitutional. All you have to do when they say that is be like, can you tell me how? That's it, because they won't, because they've never read the Constitution. They have zero idea about it. It's just the truth. They don't. And if you believe that the Supreme Court has the authority to authorize the murder of innocent children, you're just an ignorant fool. That's all there is to it. And there's certain things you can ask them. I mean, you can say, well, the Supreme Court once ruled that slaves were private property and had no rights, right? And usually they'll be like, well, they won't know that, actually. So you're already a step ahead of them. But you can say that, and they're not going to know what to say. But they'll say, Senate bill, that's unconstitutional. And you can also say, well, what about unconstitutional Supreme Court rulings? They're, again, not going to know what to say. So there's just little questions that they cannot argue against. And these are the things that you need to know. Marijuana, for example. This is a great one. Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court in 2010, with Gonzalez versus Wright, ruled that no state can distribute marijuana. Everybody's doing it. And what's happening? Nothing. Because they can't tell the states that they can't do that. But apparently, Oklahomans care more about marijuana than they do about saving babies currently. And that's what we need to change. Another one. An abolition bill calls for seceding from the Union. I heard that one myself. And I said, can you point to me in the bill where it says that? They can't because they haven't actually read the bill. That's the other thing. You read the bill, you're already a step ahead of them because they haven't read it. But they'll say, oh, that's a secession bill. All you have to do is say, no, it's 100% is not a secession bill. Abolition will put mothers who abort their children in prison. It doesn't say that either. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it will. But the explanation on that is it's just treating murder equally across the board. And the good example that I give, which they can't really rebuttal, I don't know, say a young adolescent girl in an abusive relationship gets pregnant and her boyfriend forces her to have an abortion, right, against her will. You think the courts are going to put that mother in jail? No. You think the courts are going to put the doctor and the abusive boyfriend in jail? 100%. And that's how it should be. Now, say there's a, 35-year-old career woman who gets pregnant and she's like, oh, if I don't get rid of this baby, I'm going to lose my promotion. They going to put her in jail? Possibly. Should they? Absolutely. But see, an abolition bill doesn't talk about that. All it just says is life begins at conception. We're giving those children equal protection, and the rest is up to the court. Abolition doesn't allow for the mother's life to be saved if the pregnancy is endangering the mother's life. Not true again. Not true again. Senate Bill 13, literally what we did is we took existing medical statute that just says doctors are charged to save all lives and exhaust all medical resources to save everybody. That's what it does. We're not going to be killing mothers because of abolition. It's the most ludicrous thing ever. Oh, this is probably my favorite. Abolition would create backroom and unsafe abortions. Yeah, well, murders are unsafe also, so maybe we shouldn't make murder illegal because, maybe we should clean up murder. It's ridiculous. Of course people are going to be still committing murder and trying to, and it will be unsafe. But that is the most absurd thing ever. Like, well, we want these murders to be safe. Come on. You'll hear this. We need to overturn Roe v. Wade first. They'll say that a lot. Well, here's the thing. And this is what I don't know why they don't understand. If Roe v. Wade was overturned today, which it never will be, so forget about that. If Roe v. Wade were overturned today, abortions would still be legal and carried on without a hitch in the state of Oklahoma. Why? Because of our pro-life legislation. So we don't need Roe v. Wade to be overturned, because if Roe v. Wade was overturned, guess what? It's not gonna stop anything in Oklahoma, because we've created these legal avenues. So just keep in mind, so when we're talking about being educated, keep in mind 95% of the time, legislators have not read the language of the bill. They're just going off bullet points that their staff has given to them, and it's very easily dismantled. Now, these meetings will be uncomfortable. They just will be. They're not going to like it at all. I've talked to countless families who've come by my office. They're like, hey, we're about to go talk to our senator. And they go talk to him, and they come back 40 minutes later, and they're like, that was really rough. Yeah, it will be rough. They don't want you to be there. They don't want you to do what you're doing, but we have to. That's what we have to do. So, to recap, the 3 points that we've got to really meditate on and accept when it comes to how to demand that our governing authorities establish equal justice is: 1, stop the fan club thing and admit that they're evil. That's all there is to it. Bad people, bad organization, and I hope that I showed you that. And all you got to do is look at the history. 2, build relationships with them. And you're not going to be best friends with them, I can promise you that. But they need to know who you are, and then you need to stay actively engaged in them. Don't just have one meeting and be like, all right, I'm watching you. No. Stay on them weekly, email them weekly. And then thirdly, we have to stay educated on the specific language of the bill. And it's very, very simple. Again, very weak-minded, unintelligent people are running our state. That's all there is to it. I know that sounds harsh. That's the reality of it. So to wrap things up, it does seem like an unachievable goal to end abortion to a lot of people. I talk to people all the time, and they're like, that could never happen. I don't know why we doubt so easy. We should know the God we serve, and look at the Bible. My goodness, the stories of Noah, Joseph, Moses, David, all of these things were completely unachievable. Or in more recent history, what about the Revolutionary War? No way we were going to beat Britain, a world superpower at the time. No way. We did, right? God orders all things. What about when we ended slavery? The parallels between slavery and abortion are identical. And that's a whole nother talk. We can't. There's no way you're ever going to end slavery. It's done. It's ended. Nazi Germany, nobody could beat the Nazi war machine, right? We did. So there's all these things that we can't, we have to, don't get discouraged and be like, well, that's never going to happen. It can happen. It will happen as long as the church gets engaged. So, and another thing to keep in mind on that, saying this is unachievable, I know a lot of you are just now getting into this within the past couple of years. And me being in it 6 years, there's been people who have been in it way longer than me. But just in the past 6 years, when I first ran a bill, the first abolition bill I ever ran, there was no support behind it. Nobody had any idea what it was, right? Huge pushbacks from churches when they heard about it. Well, we can't do that. Pro-life organizations, oh, that's really bad. That's not the right direction. Awful. But the rapid expansion of the abolition movement has been staggering. Absolutely staggering. You've got churches like this church, Baggett, here we are having a 2-day conference about abolition. They're streaming it over at First Baptist Church Beggs with Pastor Chris Gore and other places. And so, up in Owasso, you got a Bethel Baptist Church with Pastor Bill Askell. He's been preaching this stuff. So pastors are now engaging and being very blunt about this stuff. But not only that, other states are seeing it and being like, oh, that's what we need to do. I'm flying to Maryland on Tuesday to talk to some pastors and legislators up there about abolition because they're like, hey, we see what's going on. I think this is the route we need to go. And it's been spurred up by a couple ladies who were huge in the pro-life movement, and then they heard about this and they're like, oh, yeah, we were doing that wrong. This is the way we need to do it. Maryland's a very liberal state, and yet they're pushing it. In Arizona, I talked to a guy just elected to the House of Representatives. He's a 22-year veteran of the Army. He's a tank operator, and he is 100% on for abolition. So probably by the end of this coming year, there will be 9 states who have authored and filed bills of abolition in their states, opposed to 1 5 years ago. So it's absolutely expanding very, very fast. So if the church comes together, this is achievable, and I think God will have victory. I honestly do. I would love for this to be the way we look at slavery as a dark time in our history. I want my kids to look at abortion like that. That's what I want. And I think it absolutely is achievable. And I heard somebody say one time about this issue, they said and this is something that really stuck with me, even though I've been engaged with this for 6 years. They say when abortion is criminalized 20 years from now, and your kids ask you what your role in it was, what are you going to be able to tell them? Because I know a lot of people who are going to say, nothing. I didn't do anything. I didn't make one phone call. I didn't go to one event. Nothing. And we really need to think about that. So I'll close with, a lot of you know Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a pastor and theologian during World War II. He actually died in Flossenburg concentration camp. He was an author and everything else. He said, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act. And then he went on to say, we are not simply to bandage the wounds of the victims of injustice. We are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. Talking about Nazi Germany, and that's exactly how we need to treat this abortion holocaust. So, let's pray. Father, we come to you today thanking you for the ability to get together and discuss these things with the freedom that we have. We pray that you would give us the courage and the wisdom on how to demand that our governing authorities, people who you've put in place of power, actually establish equal justice. We ask that you go with us while we do this, Help us understand this better. Help us to speak with wisdom and love, but at the same time, help us to be very stern and steadfast. We thank you for being such a good God. We pray that you'd be with the rest of this conference. Amen.